Yo, what up sa inyo dyan? Pag-usapan naman natin ito mga tol, ang reaksyon dito sa ginagawa pong pagtutulungan ng Japan at Pilipinas. Matinding reaksyon po ng China ay halos umuyak na raw po dito, no? Tingnan po natin ang bagay po na yan. Pag-usapan natin sa video na ito at di natin pagtatagalin yan. Pero kung hindi ka pa nakasubscribe, alam nyo na, no? Pindutin ninyo yung subscribe button and notification bell para updated ka palagi sa mga videos natin parating. Let's go! So, ayun na nga mga tol, no? Bago natin umpisa ng lahat ng ito. Dun sa mga naghahanap po ng ating tutorial, no? Mga tutorial sa may mga question kayo at suggestion regarding sa mga patungkol sa computer, etc. Meron po tayong nakabukod na channel for that. Pakipindot na lang po yung description dyan. Pixel Guide PH yun po yung channel natin. So, dito sa channel po natin, magbibigay po tayo ng reaksyon sa iba't ibang mga bagay, politika man yan o mga usaping mga pangmamamayan, etc. Dito po yan sa channel natin, UMIIYAK. Anyway, ito nga po ang problema ng China ngayon sa kinakaharap po nito na tila banta sa kanila, no? Ayan po ay yung pagkakaisa ng Japan at ng Pilipinas. Ayon po dito sa balita, it was posted November 21, 2025 dito sa ABS-CBN. Sabi po, how is Japan, Philippines pact in countering China? A new defense agreement between Tokyo and Manila is boosting military cooperation between the two countries as they face rising Chinese aggression. Japan and the Philippines conducted their first military drill in October 2025 as part of a key defense pact that came into effect in September. The Reciprocal Access Agreement o RAA signed in July 2024 allows Tokyo and Manila to deploy forces on each other's soil. So meron pong pagkakasunduan agreement po na nangyayari, no? Ito po ay July 2024 pa pinirmahan o nilagdaan kung saan hinahayaan po ng Tokyo at ng Manila o Pilipinas na mag-deploy ng puwersa sa kanilang parehang teritoryo o lupa, no? So ayan po yung usapin diyan at ito po yung reaksyon ng China, no? Kamakailan lang po makikita natin ito at ito po yung panoorin po natin ano yung reaksyon nila dito, no? Ito pong balita na to ay hatid sa atin ng Crossword News. Panoorin po natin bago tayo mag-react.
Asia's front line is shifting to the islands and narrow seas where Japan, the Philippines and China are now testing each other's resolve. Japan is led today by Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi, who has doubled down on fortifying the country's long southwestern island chain, including Yonaguni, the nation's westernmost island, sitting roughly 110 kilometers from Taiwan. Her government is pushing ahead with plans to deploy new surface-to-air and anti-ship missiles there as part of a wider effort to deter China around Taiwan and the East China Sea. In parallel, Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has overseen a more assertive maritime posture in the South China Sea, sending Navy and Coast Guard vessels to resupply outposts and challenge what Manila calls unlawful Chinese incursions. Recent incidents have seen Chinese Coast Guard ships use high-pressure water cannons and ramming tactics against Philippine vessels near Thitu Island and other contested features, prompting Manila to harden its stance and deepen security cooperation with the United States. Against that backdrop, here is a 2,500-word journalist-style voiceover script built around this emerging war belt across Asia's front line, where I quote key figures. I preserve their words exactly and highlight only the most important lines. The map of Asia's security crisis is being redrawn. For years, Much of the world's attention has focused on the Taiwan Strait and the broader South China Sea. But today, a new arc of tension is taking shape, stretching from Japan's remote islands near Taiwan through the Philippines' exposed northern and western coasts, down into waters where Chinese vessels now operate with growing confidence. This is the story of how Japan is fortifying its islands, how Manila is sending more ships to sea, and how China is tightening its grip across the region, creating what some analysts are calling Asia's new war belt. On Japan's westernmost frontier, the island of Yonaguni rises out of the East China Sea, closer to Taiwan than to Tokyo. For generations, it was a quiet fishing and diving destination known for wild horses, rugged cliffs, and underwater ruins. Now it is on the front line of one of the world's most sensitive flashpoints. Japan's government has already stationed radar and troops there. In recent weeks, officials in Tokyo have moved a step further, confirming plans to deploy surface-to-air missiles to Yonaguni as part of a broader military build-up along the Nansei Island chain. Defense Minister Shinjiro Koizumi has framed the deployment as a defensive move aimed at deterring rather than provoking conflict in response to China's rapid military expansion and its intense activity around Taiwan. In practice, that means transforming Yonaguni from a quiet outpost into a heavily monitored and increasingly fortified node in a wider network of bases and sensors. Joint exercises with the United States are already bringing more foreign troops and logistics onto the island. Recent drills saw U.S. Marines offload containers, fuel and equipment to support Japan's self-defense force operations there, underscoring how closely Washington and Tokyo now coordinate their posture around Taiwan and the East China Sea. From the Japanese government's perspective, this is about closing a dangerous gap. If a crisis erupts over Taiwan, the islands running southwest from Okinawa, including Miyako, Ishigaki and Yonaguni, could become both a frontline shield and a launchpad for operations. For years, defense planners have spoken of building a southwestern wall of bases and missile batteries to complicate any Chinese attempt to project power through the Miyako Strait and into the Pacific. That wall is now rapidly taking shape. In Tokyo, Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi has tied this hardening posture directly to Japan's security and to the stability of the wider region. At recent appearances following the G20 summit, she has argued that Japan must adapt to a more dangerous neighborhood while insisting that Tokyo remains committed to dialogue and crisis management with Beijing. Her government has already signaled it will continue raising defense spending and investing in long-range strike capabilities, even as it faces questions at home about costs and the risk of entanglement in a Taiwan conflict. If Japan's island build-up represents the northern anchor of this emerging belt, the Philippines is fast becoming its southern hinge. Under President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., Manila has shifted decisively away from the hedging approach of the previous administration and towards a more open alignment with the United States and other like-minded partners. That shift is most visible at sea, where Philippine Navy and Coast Guard crews increasingly find themselves nose-to-nose with Chinese Coast Guard and maritime militia vessels. Over the last year, footage has emerged of Chinese ships using high-powered water cannons, blocking maneuvers and even ramming Philippine vessels in contested waters. Near Thitu Island, known locally as Pag-asa, and around other features in the Spratly chain, these tactics have damaged Philippine hulls and sparked outrage in Manila. Philippine officials have condemned what they describe as bullying and dangerous behavior, but they have also vowed not to pull back. At times, the confrontation has gone beyond words. In one particularly serious incident, Chinese ships reportedly fired water cannons and rammed a Philippine government vessel near Thitu, causing structural damage. No one was killed, but Philippine authorities called the incident reckless and provocative, warning that a single miscalculation, a crew member seriously injured or worse, could trigger a much larger crisis. President Marcos has been unusually blunt about the stakes. In an earlier regional security forum, he was asked what might constitute a red line in the South China Sea. He responded that if by a willful act a Filipino not only serviceman but even Filipino citizen is killed, that is what I think very very close to what we define as an act of war, and therefore we will respond accordingly. Ferdinand Marcos Jr., President of the Republic of the Philippines. Those words reverberated across the region because any Philippine response would not occur in a vacuum. Manila is tied to Washington by a mutual defense treaty, and U.S. officials have repeatedly stated that attacks on Philippine forces and vessels in the South China Sea could invoke American obligations. In recent weeks, that alliance has tightened further. The United States and the Philippines announced a new joint task force Philippines designed to coordinate operations and planning across key areas, including the South China Sea. And U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Philippine Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro presented the task force as part of a broader push to re-establish deterrence in the region, signaling that joint patrols, exercises and basing arrangements are likely to expand.
Okay guys, siguro hanggang dito na panoorin natin. Medyo mahaba yung video. Pwede naman ninyong panoorin yan. I-search lang ninyo China increases pressure, Japan and Philippines ready to resist. No, dito yan sa Cross World News. Anyway, bago po tayo magtapos sa video na ito, anong masasabi mo dito na mukhang nagre-react po talaga ng malala itong China sa ugnayan ng Japan, Pilipinas at maging ng US? No? Tingin ninyo, ano masasabi ninyo? Kasi ako po, kung ako tatanungin, wala pong choice yung mga bansa Japan, Pilipinas, maging ang Amerika na makipagtulungan sa mga alyado nito. Kasi kung hindi po pag-ingatan nila ito, technically speaking, mukhang pinagbibigyan na nila makaporma ang China pagkaganon. Pero dahil nga po, sila po ay maagap ang Japan, maging ang Pilipinas, no? Straight to the point po yung kasalukuyang administrasyon po natin dito sa bansa na once na magka-problema no sa ating mga mamamayang Pilipino diyan sa WPS, yan po mag-trigger ng treaty ng Amerika at Pilipinas. Correct me if I'm wrong pero yan po yung pagkaunawa ko diyan at pinag-iingatan rin po yan ng China, no? Kasi magkamali sila yari rin sila, no? Kasi ito po bansa sa mga bansa na actually wala pong mananalo kapag nagsimula ang gera, lalo na po ngayon mainit po ang mga usapin patungkol po sa nuclear war, no? Talaga pong wala pong mananalo dyan, lahat po talo dyan. Pero ngayon po dito sa estado po ng ating bansa at maging ng Taiwan, no, hindi po pagbibigyan ito. Kasi once na makuha ng China ang Taiwan, talagang dodominahin nila ang world order. Magkakaroon po yan dahil nandun po yung mga chipset, yung mga malalaking bagay na kapakipakinabang sa militarisasyon at sa iba pang mga kasangkapan sa teknolohiya, militar man o hindi militar, no, nandun po sa Taiwan. Search po ninyo, no? At ngayon mukhang nakahanda po ang Amerika maging Japan, no, sa mga bagay po na ito. Sabi nga po ready to resist ang mga bansa po na ito. At ngayon sabi ng marami tila umiiyak na po yung China dito po sa pag-uugnayan ng mga bansa na ito, including po ng bansang Pilipinas. Ikaw, anong masasabi mo dito, no? Sila ba, no, talagang dapat nagre-react dito o dapat sila nakikipag-koopera sa bansang Pilipinas, sa mga bansang na argabyado ng China, no? Ito pong China ay naniniwala ko hindi sila dapat mag-react ng ganito. Dapat sila po ay i-consider nila yung maliliit na bansa, yung mga naapektuhan, etc. No, hindi yung ganyan na matapang pa sila, no? Pero anyway, ang hirap po magkomento sa mga ganitong bagay kasi prayer po talaga ito. Pero kung technical lang ang titignan po natin, mali na kagad. Literally, makikita mo mali na kagad ang China dito, no? Pero gusto ko pong malaman kung ano yung mga opinion ninyo. Mag-usap po tayo sa comment section, no? Lalo sa panahon ngayon, marami po nagiging pro-China. Sabi nila, okay yung ganito, ganyan. Diba? Marami tayong mahabang pag-uusapan pero simple lang naman, makatwiran ba ang ginagawa ng China o hindi? Yes or no lang. At pag-usapan natin sa comment section. Magko-comment po ako as much as possible. And please do not forget to hit the subscribe button and notification bell para updated ka palagi sa mga videos natin parating. See you ulit sa susunod na video.